It is now 37 years since one of the most controversial rugby union test series took place in South Africa in the spring of 1986. The Cavaliers was an unofficial New Zealand rugby union team which toured South Africa in this year. The Cavaliers played 12 matches, including a 4-match test series against the Springboks. The rivalry between the New Zealand All Blacks and the South African Springboks had been intense ever since their first meeting in 1921. The generation of leading players in the mid-1980s were almost without exception keen for the rivalry to continue, despite growing public awareness of the injustices that were occurring daily in Apartheid South Africa.
They were actually the team that everyone aspired to play against in New Zealand, South Africa. It didn't matter who you were playing for, it was just to be able to play against them.
It was a long-standing, competitive, one of our greatest sort of Everest to climb to beat South Africa in South Africa.
They are historical foes who used to beat us more than we beat them. Pretty simple. That's the history of it.
After 2 tours by the All Blacks to South Africa in 1970 and 1976, the first tour which permitted players of Maori and Samoan heritage to tour the country, the Springboks made their first tour to New Zealand since 1965 in 1981. The tour was marked by protests both inside and outside the grounds where the matches were being played. 2 matches had to be cancelled, and the decision to allow the tour split the country and divided many families. Furthermore, damaging images of the pilot of a night plane flower bombing the players on the pitch during the nail-biting the deciding third test in Auckland were seen all around the world. The 1981 Springbok Tour of New Zealand was a very significant event to New Zealand. The tour caused social ruptures within communities and families across the country. With the national government backing the tour, protests against apartheid sport turned into confrontations with both police and pro-tour rugby fans on marches and at matches. Scenes of turmoil during the 1981 Springbok Tour shocked New Zealanders who were unused to disagreements, leading to such widespread and sustained protests and violent encounters. Throughout the 8 weeks of the tour, around 2,000 New Zealanders were arrested. A short-term effect was that it caused a divide between the country with the immense disturbances to daily life. Friendships and family relationships were harmed due to different perspectives on the tour. At the time, it broke families up, with it going to the extent that some families couldn't even live together anymore. The breakdown in law and order associated with the 1981 tour effectively placed future Springbok tours on the back burner and led to many New Zealanders starting to question the wisdom of sporting contact with apartheid South Africa. The sight of the rifts carved into New Zealand society by the 1981 tour gave rise to the notion that no further tours could be mounted safely, contributing significantly to South Africa's rugby's post-1981 isolation.
South African Rugby Chief Dr. Danny Craven confirmed tonight that an invitation will be sent to the All Blacks to tour his country.
The New Zealand Rugby Football Union Council on 18th April 1985 announced that it has accepted the invitation of the South African Rugby Board to tour the country. The decision was welcomed by the rugby fraternity. However, the New Zealand government and organisations such as HALT, which stands for Halt All Races Tours, expressed their dismay at the decision.
The New Zealand government has come out saying they are not in support of the upcoming South Africa Rugby Tour.
Is there any doubt in your mind as to the government's stand over sporting contact?
Oh no, there hasn't been for quite some time.
Everyone's got their political opinions, but for me, it was about me playing rugby, and there's no politics involved. I just wanted to play rugby against one of the best teams in the world.
I felt that if we went to Africa, we could go with a multicultural team and show them how the world should be.
All set to go ahead until 2 young lawyers decided to take the rugby union and the tour to court.
The plaintiff's basic argument, Mr. Thomas said, was that rugby cannot thrive without the goodwill of the community, and the decision to tour had already damaged that goodwill, perhaps irreparably.
The planned tour to South Africa is off.
All Black coach Brian Lahore recalled being disappointed for the players. I was at home when I heard the news on the radio. I was numb. When you work for something and it's taken away from you, you're left numb. It's as if part of you have been taken away from you. The guys were shattered, their rugby life in tatters. They've been thinking of little else for years. Every time you went for a run, you'd run a wee bit harder and a wee bit longer, because you think of South Africa. It was devastating for them. What do you say to guys like Gary Knight and John Ashworth? There's no challenges left for them. They knew that. The end of their careers had been taken away from them. Andy Hayden recalled, "Personally, I was angry. To tour South Africa was certainly top of the list of ambitions I had in life. But the loss of opportunity to make a 12 All Black tour was not in itself a devastation. Perhaps I was disappointed with those who had no experience the thrill of wearing the All Black jersey, even though they had been selected to tour. You are not an All Black until you take to the field." Veteran All Black John Ashworth recalled feeling like he'd suffered a serious personal injury and was out of the tour. "I kept thinking over and over again that the great ambition in my life to wear the All Black jersey in South Africa had been unfairly ripped away from me. I thought, you bastards, you've done it this time and I'll never forget that hurt." For the newly selected All Blacks chosen to tour South Africa, the High Court injunction created enormous uncertainty. Wayne Shelford, Steve McDowell, Vic Simpson and Taranaki winger Bryce Robbins were left wondering whether they would ever get the opportunity to wear the prized black jersey. McDowell recalled in the Rugby News how he went home on a Saturday feeling absolutely stunned. "I just sat in a daze, not knowing what to think."
The feeling amongst the players when the tour was cancelled because of the court case was disappointment. I was disappointed at the time because I'd been selected to go.
As part of my dream of being an All Black was to play in South Africa. That was taken away from me. I think that I would have loved to have gone and represented New Zealand as an All Black.
The action amongst politicians were predictable. The Prime Minister proclaimed to be probably the proudest I've ever been to be a lawyer. In a curious way, it was a real triumph for rugby people, because two rugby supporters have put their support in a wider context of New Zealand's wider responsibility. Anti-tour campaigners were understandingly jubilant. Heart leader John Minto described Casey's ruling as a courageous decision and is in the right direction, he said. It clearly points to who has been offside in this whole campaign.
As soon as the tour was stopped, we heard rumours about the possibilities of a rebel tour.
Was there secrecy behind the scenes? Of course there was. It had been going on for quite a while, right from the time that it was actually taken away from us.
Andy Hayden in particular came into my room and just said, "We're planning to have a rebel tour to South Africa next year." The rugby union couldn't send a team because they'd been injuncted, but players of their own accord could go. That was the sort of talk.
Wherever the reports are coming from out there, they're coming in thick and fast. Earlier today, Auckland coach John Hart had this to say on the subject.
Well, let me answer it this way. Where there's smoke, there's fire. All Blacks we contacted today denied all knowledge of a secret rebel tour.
Can we get an unequivocal yes or no? Are you going to lead a rebel tour to South Africa?
No, I'm not.
The Cavaliers concept arose after the cancellation of the All Black tour to South Africa, leading to two attempts to arrange a rebel tour. In the first attempt, South African Barbarians chairman Chick Henderson and Auckland businessman and former Auckland Rugby Union committee member Winston McDonald played crucial roles. Players were to resign from clubs before departure to remove them from the jurisdiction of the New Zealand Rugby Football Union, and upon reaching South Africa they would form a Barbarians team following the All Blacks' original 1985 itinerary. The first attempt faced obstacles when Athletics warned players of contempt of court, casting doubts in the minds of many players about the wisdom to proceed with a rebel tour. Many were, however, still unhappy about the postponement of the tour to South Africa, and to appease the players, a replacement All Black tour to Argentina was arranged by the New Zealand Rugby Football Union. The prospect of a 1986 South African tour gained momentum during the Argentina trip. Senior player Mary Mexter found unanimous support amongst the originally selected touring players for another attempt. When Mexter informed Andy Hayden of this revelation, Hayden responded positively, expressing his willingness to participate and to pass the information on to South Africa. Plans were initiated within 2 weeks of the Argentina return, with a Hong Kong meeting involving key figures agreeing on ground rules for an unofficial 1986 tour. The meeting was attended by Andy Hayden, All Blacks captain Andy Dalton and Ian Kirkpatrick and Winston McDonald, and from the South African side the Transvaal Rugby Union Football Union chairman Louis Leit, Ellis Park general manager Robert Denton, Lace personal solicitor Mervyn Key, and Johan Klaassen, General Manager of Volkskas Industrial Bank, the tour financiers. Following the Hong Kong meeting, Winston McDonald and Mervyn Key travelled across New Zealand, presenting players with a carefully worded letter of intent. Details such as departure dates and match menus were kept from the players to maintain secrecy. This was crucial to avoid any possible legal challenges and interference from the New Zealand Rugby Football Union. Colin Mees and Ian Kirkpatrick were appointed coach and manager in February 1986. The final challenge was to arrange travel for the players, with unorthodox plans due to the lack of approval from the New Zealand Rugby Football Union. Some players were headed to the IRB Centennial matches in Britain, while others were invited to play for the World 15 against Transvaal in South Africa. The majority of players left New Zealand on 13 April, taking a Qantas flight to Sydney, then travelling through Hong Kong to Taiwan to connect with a South African Airways flight to Mauritius to reach Johannesburg. To avoid anti-apartheid protesters, tickets were booked under false names. The players' true identities matched those on their passports.
A party of 30 players and 2 coaches is off to South Africa for 12 matches, including 4 so-called tests, due to start next week.
The players were motivated by rectifying perceived injustices from the cancellation of the 1985 tour and embracing the ultimate rugby challenge for an All Black, namely to play the Springboks in South Africa. Jock Hobbs highlighted the players' desire to play against South Africa, while Mary Mexted emphasised regaining their right to choose to play rugby in South Africa. Except for David Kirk and John Kirwan, every player who had been selected to South Africa in 1985 indicated that they were prepared to go. In New Zealand rugby circles, opinions were sharply divided. The Auckland Rugby Union sent a telegram to Blasey, the chairperson of the New Zealand Rugby Football Union in London, urgently advocating immediate action against the players. This call received backing from 10 out of the 11 unions whose players were in South Africa. Canterbury and future All Black coach Alex Wiley took a more understanding stance towards the players' actions. Wiley's expressed sympathy, stating, and I quote, "I wouldn't blame them for wanting to go to South Africa. They played the game to try and get as much enjoyment as possible. I believe the last tour was stopped by foul means, and to have it taken away the way it was not sporting for the players concerned. It's an amateur game, and as such the players have the right to please themselves." End quote. The response from the New Zealand political leaders followed a predictable pattern. Prime Minister Langer called for the immediate cancellation of the tour, asserting that it was not in the best interest of New Zealand. He urged New Zealanders, whatever the review on the rugby, not to lend their support to what he called the selfish act. Opponents of the 1985 tour, including Patrick Finnegan, criticised the players for prioritising personal interests over that of New Zealand, with Hart proposing severe measures like life bans for the players and expelling the SA Rugby Board from the International Rugby Board. In contrast, support of the tour were evident in South African media. Radio South Africa argued against sport boycotts, and a poll by New Zealand's Rugby News showed that 86.5% supported the players' decision to tour. Television New Zealand opted not to broadcast the matches, but would cover the tour for its potential repercussions on New Zealand sports in general, considering the actual games unofficial and irrelevant. The Cavaliers players found it difficult to accept Television New Zealand's decree not to broadcast the matches, and this soured the relationship with the New Zealand media in general during the tour. On the 40th of April, the players arrived in Jan Smuts Airport, Johannesburg, and were immediately engulfed by the South African media.
We have today in our midst 30 New Zealand rugby players who have come to this country to play against South African provincial sides and play also against the strongest team we can offer them.
Do you think they're going to give the Springboks a good go?
We'll try. Yeah, definitely we'll be trying.
6 days later, the team held a press conference at Johannesburg home of Louis Late, which marked the naming of the team as the Cavaliers. Meads, Kirkpatrick and Dalton delivered the following press release. Our team members have been invited by the Transvaal Rugby Union to play in South Africa as a collection of individual players. We are not the All Black. That is the official team of the New Zealand Rugby Football Union. We will be known as the Cavaliers. We are aware South Africa has political problems, but as sportsmen we emphasize that it would be improper for us to comment on them. We are here to play sport and will not at any stage debate politics or answer any politically slanted questions. We will be playing 12 games, 4 of which will be against the South African team. These will be not official tests, as we do not represent an official rugby union or the New Zealand Rugby Football Union. At no stage of the tour will the team members talk to the media. That concluded the press statement.
We are not the All Blacks. This is not the official team of the New Zealand Rugby Union, and we will be known as the Cavaliers.
The assembled Cavaliers were a formidable squad packed with some legendary All Blacks. Gary Knight, Andy Hayden, Mark Shaw, Murray Mixted and the Wetton brothers provided essential strength in the forwards, and the young Grant Fox and Wayne Smith at fly-off marshalled the strong backline. They faced a committed Springbok team with relatively little test match experience, but with such luminaries as Captain Icebird at fly-off, Dani Gerber in the centre, Hooker Uli Smith, the gigantic lock Louis Millman, and feature captain Jannie Breed at number 8. What was the involvement of the South African Rugby Board in the tour, and did they sanction it? The Transvaal Rugby Union, despite informing the South African Rugby Board about its intention to host a rugby tour in 1986, did not disclose that the invitees would be the All Black players. New Zealand Rugby Football Union Chairman Ces Blasey expressed surprise and disappointment, considering the situation unacceptable, which risks South Africa's standing as an IRB member. The South African Rugby Board faced accusations of violating the IRB regulations, and on April 23, the day the Cavaliers would play their first tour match against the Union Springboks, the IRB demanded the immediate cancellation of the tour, disapproving of it and instructing the South African Rugby Board to end it. Despite the IRB opposition and the demand to cancel the tour, the South African Rugby Board, relying on a subsequent legal opinion, officially sanctioned the tour, awarding full test caps to the Springboks. Blasey expressed discontent with the decision, but Craven defended it at the official welcome for the Cavaliers, viewing the tour as a stabilising factor during a period of rugby reform and asserting, and I quote, "Never before has South Africa needed a tour of this nature so much," end quote. Marketed as the Battle of the Giants, the Cavaliers face a challenging schedule, playing 12 matches, including 4 tests, in the space of just 6 weeks. Matches against the top provincial teams, the South African Barbarians and the Junior Springboks, emphasised Transvaal Rugby Union's involvement, with 4 of the 12 games being played in Johannesburg. Not being able to play in the official All Black jersey, the team wore a black uniform with gold bands, symbolising the tour sponsor, South African Yellow Pages. The emblem features a gold Ellis Park shaped background with a green oval containing a silver fern and a springbok. Due to the tour's unsanctioned status, retired Welshman Ken Rowlands was scheduled to referee the 4 tests, as top referees feared IRB repercussions. South Africa in the mid-1980s were a country in turmoil, with protests and violence erupting in many of the black townships. The government reacted by instituting various state of emergencies to try and quell the violence. Often this, however, had the opposite effect. Locally and internationally, the calls for an end to apartheid intensified, and sanctions were introduced to try and force change in the political system. South African anti-apartheid bodies and activists denounced the tour and vowed to protest against it. Frank van der Horst, the president of the South African Council on Sport, called the players involved sporting prostitutes. It is in this context that the 1986 Cavaliers tour took place. There were concerns that the tour could be violently disrupted, as terror attacks has increased since the initiation of the ANC civil disobedience campaign in 1985. Because of this, the Cavaliers were under constant police surveillance and protection. However, there were only a few incidents of opposition to the tour, leading to demonstrations. The only significant incident was in Cape Town, where township schools pupils burnt an amount of Yellow Pages directories. Some of the teams that the Cavaliers played against included people of colour like Wilfred Kipper for the Western Province against the tourists. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. It would be greatly appreciated if you could also subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.